I will try to fold my presentation to half an hour as it was scheduled. But if I have more minutes, please let me know now so I'll know how to manage. The topic which I would like to speak about is a question, actually. Arab nationalism, a real matter or only an illusion? And this is a very important question, because in too many places, like academic institutions, in the media, people talk about Arab nationalism and the Arab nation and so forth. So the question is there an Arab nation? What is nationalism in the Arab world? After the presentation of Professor Trigano about how in the West, in general, nationalism was created as an idea which will combine the individuals into a collective. And the nationalism actually is the content of the collective, whether it is a language, it could be religion or a sect, it could be the land, as was mentioned, as a patriotism. Patria, is a homeland. And all kinds of ideas, or clothing, food, all the characteristics of a group, music, dances, which makes the culture of the group and combines the individuals into one collective. And here, definitely, we can see the history of Europe after the spring of nations, as it was since the mid-19th century, and especially when it comes to music. Brahms, Ken Johannes Brahms, went to Hungary and collected the Hungarian poems and dances. Antonin Dvořák did it to Slavic dances, and then these things are recorded until this very day. And this is what the content, part of the content of nationalism in the era after the dismemberment of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Okay, so this is how nations in Europe were made, in very short and very short presentation. How come? However, in the Middle East, the history was different. The societies of the Middle East are not built as a nation, like French or Hungarian, but rather as tribes. Tribes, because of the environment. Since the environment here in the Middle East is a desert, a big desert. And you know what? Let me show you what it means to have a desert here in the Middle East. It'll take me a little minute to show the real picture of the Middle East. And the maps and pictures are very important when it comes to this region, because people in Europe usually find it very hard to understand the Middle East because they don't see the picture of the Middle East. So let me show you the real picture of the Middle East, which people are not aware of. Now, let me share this picture with you all. This. Okay, you can very easily see that the Middle East is one big desert, and this is the Middle East, but this is Africa. But the Middle East is this. This is Morocco here. This is Algeria. This is Tunisia here. This is Libya. This is Egypt. This is the Nile. Saudi Arabia, Iraq. Okay, the whole thing is a desert. And in a desert, you have to stick to your source of water, otherwise you are dead. And in order to keep your source of water, You cannot live as an individual. You need to live as a group, because the individual is weak while the group is strong. And the strongest group is the family, the father and the sons, and later the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren, the cousins, the second cousins, third cousins. And here you get a hamula, as we say in Hebrew, in Arabic, a tribe or a clan or extended family, which is the same thing. Therefore, the societies in the Middle East, traditionally, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of years since people came to live in the Middle East, they were forced to live in groups, family groups, which we'll call a tribe. Okay, we'll use this term, although some people do not like this term. We talk about tribe and tribalism. Tribalism is the culture of tribe, and the most basic characteristic of tribalism is that the other tribe are the enemy. The other tribe is the enemy. Although they live next to us because they want to take our water or to take our trees or our field or whatever, and once they killed one of us and we killed one of them, so the other, with a big O, is the enemy by definition in the Middle East. And this is the problem. Why? Because when you come to modern countries, or modern states, let's stop this share. You can see that the societies here in the Middle East are highly fragmented along tribal lines. Let me show you. This is Iraq until this very day. These are the tribes of Iraq. And this is the main problem in this country, but there is no nation, because they see each other as the enemy. Okay, and this is the nationalism was supposed to change this culture totally, to convince all the people, all the tribes in Iraq, that they are one nation and not tribes anymore. Now, not only this is the problem. These tribes in the northern part of Iraq are Kurdish. They are not Arabs. The tribes are Kurdish. This and this one are Turkmens, not even Arabs, which settled here in the Ottoman time, and nobody marries with them because they are not, they say in Yiddish, nicht unserer. They are not one of us. They are not of us. So nobody gets married with them. And these are Persians here. So you have in Iraq 4 ethnic groups: Arabs, Kurds, Turkmens, and Persians, divided to 74 tribes. And these are the names of the tribes. Now, in Iraq, not only this is the problem. In Iraq, there are some 10 religions. Only in Iraq, 10 religions. Muslims, Christians, there are some Jews, once there were more, Yazidis, Shubaks, Sabais, Mandays, Zoroastrians, in addition to Druze and Alawis who ran away from Syria. So you have altogether some 10 religions only in Iraq, and some of them are divided to sects. The Muslims are divided between Sunnah and Shia and Salafis and Sufis and all kinds of others. And the Christians, when they were still there were 6 different denominations. They had Chaldeans and Nestorians, and I'm not sure that Pravoslavis was there, but many others. So and these traditional groups are deeply rooted in the people, and people gather around these identifications. And when the modern country came, Iraq, which was drawn by the British created Iraq in order to take the oil. This was the reason why they made Iraq. And the British hoped that thanks to the fact that there's a one state, one border, one army, one flag, one national anthem, one government, one Ministry of Education, one Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and all these organs of the one state named Iraq. This will settle in the hearts of the people and will throw out all the traditional identifications of people to the tribe, or loyalties to the tribe, to the ethnic group, to the religious group, or to the sectarian group. And everybody will sit around one fire and sing Kumbaya together. And this did not happen. In Iraq, in spite of the fact that they have one flag and one national anthem and one government and one Ministry of Foreign Affairs and so forth, Kurds remained Kurdish, Arabs remained Arabs, Muslims remained Muslims, Christians remained Christians, Jews remained Jews, Sunnah remained Sunnah, Shia remained Sunnah, and they continue fighting with each other. And the Iraqi nationalism is a total failure. And the proof is what you see today. The same thing, the same picture, the same dream about nationalism was also in Yemen. And this is the picture of Yemen, of the tribes of Yemen. Who with the right mind can, they fight each other day and night. Who with the right mind can talk about a nation there when they see each other as the enemy, by definition, because they are other? Okay? And there are many more. I can show you the maps of Syria and the map of Libya. Libya is the best. Libya is really they take the record. Let me show you Libya. This is like 10% of Libya, the area of Tripoli. And you can see here, all these little names are tribes. And here, unlike Yemen and Iraq, here there are no borders between the tribes, because they wander. Once they exhaust the source of water, they go to other place. So they don't have steady place to stay in. So there are more or less revolving or roving in that area. And this is 1%, this is 10% of Libya. So imagine how many tribes are all over Libya. Of course, there are small tribes because Libya is a desert, unlike Iraq and Yemen. Okay, so now try to convince them that they are a nation, a Libyan nation. Okay, so this is why the local nationalism means Iraqi, Syrian, Libyan, Yemenite nationalisms failed, because every one of them is society which is highly fragmented along tribal lines, ethnic lines. In Libya, there are Arabs and Berbers. In Syria, there are Arabs and Turkmens, and Kurds, of course, in Syria, never became a nation. Okay, so these are I'm talking about tribalism, ethnicism, religious issues between Christians, Muslims, and others, and sectarian issues, Sunnah and Shia. And these issues prevented the crystallization of groups in these countries, and this is the source of all evil in these countries. And what we see today in Syria, in Iraq, in Libya, in Yemen, is the result of the fact that the state failed to settle in the hearts of the people and to replace the traditional loyalties of the people to all these traditional frameworks. And this is why the local nationalism failed. Another failure in the Arab world is the comprehensive nationalism, because this is how it began. The nationalism of the Arab nationalism, which is supposed to combine Morocco and Algeria and Tunisia and Libya and Egypt and Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, which is another failing state, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, and so forth. All these Arab countries were supposed to be united under the idea of Arab nationalism. So this is even more complicated. Here, you take groups which even speak different languages, because the language of North Africa is different from the language of Egypt and the Arabic language. And the Arabic in Saudi Arabia is different. And in the Syria area, the greater Syria, is different from Iraq. And a man from Morocco cannot go in the marketplace of Baghdad in Iraq even to buy a tomato, because nobody will understand what he means. Okay, so the difference in the languages made it totally impossible to shape a nationalism based on the Arab idea of, since you're all Arabs, we are all one nation. To a degree that they never succeeded even to define who is an Arab. What is an Arab? Why? Because even the Arab League, which was created in 1945, until this very day, has not yet came to the conclusion who is an Arab. Why? If they say that Arabs is all those who speak Arabic, let's say from home, they include many Jews, because there are many Jews who speak Arabic from home. Those Jews who lived or still live in Morocco, and Iraq, and all this, many of them came to Israel. And since the Arab League did not want to include these Jews in the Arab nation, they could not define the Arab nation as everybody who speaks Arabic. Okay, so politics here are involved. So until this very day, those who live in the Arab world, there are many Arabs who live in Europe. There are many Arabs who live in other parts of the world. So aren't they Arabs anymore? Only because they moved to live in other places. So there is no definition to who is an Arab. So you cannot define the Arab world, according to this, to the absence of definition of an Arab. So there is no definition of the Arab world so far. And so this is also a failure. And here comes also the political problem. The Arab League was sharply divided to two kinds of states. The one kind of states is the modern states, which were created mostly by France. I'm talking about Lebanon, Syria, and the countries which France was formerly in Algeria, in Tunisia, Morocco. Other group of countries which were created by Britain, talking about Jordan, about Iraq. Here, more or less, they had some role. Sudan, also that part. And Italy. Italy was in Libya. Okay, so these modern countries were created by the Westerners, means by the colonialist powers from Europe. And they actually defined the states because they marked the borders according to their own interests, not according to the local people interests, but according to the European countries' interests. So they divided the Middle East as they wanted. And they tried during the Mandate time, especially here in the Mashriq and in Syria, in Iraq, in Jordan, they tried to bring these countries to some kind of European-like country with a government, with a parliament, with a president, or legislative and executive authorities, and to be more or less like Europe. Not only this, these countries, some of them actually have adopted European ideas like socialism. The Ba'ath in Syria, in Iraq, are actually socialism. The Arab Socialist Party of Egypt, with the party of Gamal Abdel Nasser, another kind of socialism. Okay, others adopted all kinds of other European ideas like liberalism in the former time of Syria in the 50s, for example. So these countries, these modern countries, actually were established by a small elite of intellectuals who thought that we can be liberated from all the traditions, the tribal tradition, the ethnic tradition, the religious tradition, and the sectarian tradition by bringing ideologies from Europe, nationalism, patriotism. Patriotism, by the way, is Lebanon. Lebanon tried to combine all the sects in Lebanon, the Christians, the Druze, the Shia, and the Sunnah, under the idea that we are all live on one state, on one country named Lebanon. This was the idea, just like Belgium, between the Valons and the Flames and the others. So this is the European ideas, patriotism, nationalism, socialism. In Yemen, they had for some years Trotskyism, even in southern Yemen, all kinds of ideas of isms which were brought from Europe, and they tried to build these modern states upon these ideas and to convince all the tribes and the ethnic groups and the religious and the sectarian groups that they should give up on their identities and adopt a new modern identity, when these people do not know how to read the text of these ideas, of these ideologies. So this is why these ideologies failed in these modern countries, and the only thing which made them into something is the hatred to Israel. And this is why Syria and Iraq and Libya always led the anti-Israeli propaganda and discourse in order to galvanize all the tribes and the ethnic groups and the religious and the sectarian groups under the aegis of the illegitimate leader who took the place by force and rules them, by the torture dungeons in this country, like Assad in Syria or Saddam Hussein in Iraq or Gaddafi in Libya and so forth. And this is why these countries are failing states, because they failed to replace the old traditions and to bring into the public sphere the new ideas of nationalism or socialism or patriotism or Trotskyism or whatever ism came from the West. The other side of the Arab League was the traditional countries. I'm talking about Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Morocco, Bahrain, Oman. And these are countries, traditional countries. They make money if they have oil, like Abu Dhabi. They make money out of business, like Dubai, if they don't have oil. And Jordan has nothing. But these countries are normal countries. I'm not saying that they are very rich like Jordan and Morocco, but they are more or less stable countries. More or less, they never tried to adopt any socialism or Trotskyism or democracy even, nothing. They live their life. How can we explain this? That these countries are calm, more or less, and normal countries, because they are based on the tradition. Kuwait is one tribe, Al-Sabah. And when one tribe controls itself, it doesn't bother with the enemies. Qatar is one tribe, Al-Thani, this is the name of the tribe of Qatar. Abu Dhabi is one tribe, Al-Nihyan. Dubai is one tribe, Al-Maktoum. Saudi Arabia is a combination of tribes which were combined in the tent of Abdulaziz ibn Saud, the founder of the kingdom. By marriage, he married daughters of the leaders of other tribes' leaders in order to make sure that they don't rebel against him. He had dozens of wives and hundreds of children. Okay, this is how you combine tribes, by marriage. Forced marriage, but marriage. Jordan is a king who has his tradition from the Hijaz, the Saudis kicked his great-grandfather. And it's a kingdom with a king who knows how to speak to many people. Okay, he has his problem. I'm not saying that there's no problems. But compared to Iraq and Syria, Jordan is heaven. Morocco, of course, Morocco has problems with the Berbers and others. But still, since it's a traditional country, it did not build itself on ideologies which came from Europe or from okay. I'm not saying that Morocco is they live in tents and with camels, but definitely the structure of the state reflects the culture of the Middle East rather than reflecting the culture of Moscow or Paris or London. And this is why the Arab world is divided between the failing states, which were all an attempt to adopt European ideas in order to cover the domestic fragmentation of the society, while the traditional countries, either they are one tribe, like the Emirates in the Gulf, or combination of tribes which were combined according to the traditional way of the Middle East, by a leadership, by speaking to each other, by accepting the other, all these ways of how to combine societies in the Middle East. And this is actually why nationalism is a failure in the Middle East, because it was based on foreign ideas which were imported by the colonialists and a handful of modernists, those who actually learned in this. Those who actually learned or studied in the Sorbonne or in Oxford or in Moscow and brought into the Middle East ideas which they learned in other countries. And this is why these Golda, can you mute Kerem family?
Well,
yeah, it's muted. Okay. So this is why nationalism and patriotism failed, just like all the other foreign ideologies which tried to settle in the hearts of people in the Middle East. And another problem in the Middle East is the religion. Islam, which is the religion of the whole Middle East, rejects totally any ideology which does not go along with the Islamic ideas. Socialism is against Islam. Patriotism is also. Why? Patriotism means, or nationalism also means, that all the members of the nation are equal, whether they are Muslims, Christians, Jews, Druze, Arab, Druze, Alawis, Yazidis, and all the others. Why? Because they are all citizens of the state or members of the nation, because they all speak Arabic and so forth, and they live in Iraq also. And this is totally against Islam, because according to Islam, there cannot be any way to equate a Muslim with a Jew or with a Christian, let alone the idol worshippers like Yazidis and Sabais and Mandays and Shubaks and Zoroastrians who are also in the Middle East. So there is no way to say.
I apologize. Just can you make the conclusion, because we are.
Yes. Okay, so I will conclude. The culture of the Middle East, whether the tribal culture or the religious culture or the ethnic culture or the sectarian culture in the Middle East, rejected the nationalism in all its forms, shapes, which tried to settle in the hearts of the Middle East. And this is why any kind of nationalism in the Middle East cannot work as long as the societies of the Middle East are based on the tribe and adherent to Islam. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Questions, remarks?
Yes. What would be your analysis of the Palestinian nationalism if it exists?
It's the same thing. It exists only as long as Israel is involved in this definition. If you take Israel from the equation, they will fight each other. You know, how do I know? A girl from Hebron has no option to get married to a boy from Nablus, from Shechem. Because, as they say in Arabic, they sind nicht unserer. You know, they are not from us. In Arabic, it's mush minna. Okay, mush minna, they are not from us. They unite only against Israel. And this is, if you create a Palestinian state, it will end up like Syria.
Other questions?
Well, just a comment, I would say. You know, maybe Professor Talgat Khalif would say anything in time, but I want to mention the Kazakh case, where there is a dry steppe where water resources are very important also. 100 years ago, it was covered by many tribes, nomadic tribes, like in the Middle East. The idea of nationalism was also introduced from somewhere. And after the Soviet modernization, what we have now in Kazakhstan is a pretty modernized state, and there was a sort of tribalism in the 90s, and they worried about that. But in general, it's now it's quite modern tribe. Oh, sorry, modern state with the Kazakh nation, and that's it.
Just to remind you, one of the slogans of the Soviet Union was fraternity of nations, or brotherhood of groups of nations. I don't know how you say it in Russian. And this was only an illusion. What? The Russians and the Kazakhs and the Uzbeks and the Tajikis and the Chechens and the Ukrainians are all brothers? This was a dream. This was a slogan. Nobody really believed in it. Okay? And this is why the Soviet Union was fragmented along ethnic lines. And you have today ethnic states. By the way, Iran is going to be fragmented the same way. Because Iran is also, and it's not one nation. This is many ethnic groups, which never became a nation. The Iranian idea is rather modern.
Okay. It was called a special entity, the Soviet nation, the Soviet people. It was a term. Professor Khalif, did you want to tell something? Or?
Excuse me, could you translate please this question?
Проблема была вот в чем. Значит, речь шла о том, что на Ближнем Востоке из-за пустынных ландшафтов, из-за племенной организации никакого единства быть не может, никакого национализма по определению быть не может, и никакой нации там не может возникнуть. В ответ я привел пример Казахстана, где 100 лет назад было много племен, и тоже были ну, не пустынные условия, а степные условия, но вода тоже была очень важна. А потом была советская модернизация. И, насколько я понимаю, все-таки сегодня возникла или возникает казахская нация, и племена сохранились в основном только в памяти, они уже не играют большой политической роли.
Окей. И да, если можно кратко, потому что у нас уже сейчас вторая сессия.
Да. Я бы здесь хотел,
Спасибо.
спасибо большое. Я бы здесь хотел уточнить, что объединение казахских племен произошло раньше, в период создания казахского ханства. После этого, да, были определенные разобщения, периоды. Казахское ханство функционировало фактически в формате чуть не федерации или конфедерации. Но, тем не менее, да, советская модернизация скорее была как способом урбанизации казахов и приведения к оседлости. Но именно процесс формирования политической нации, он начался, наверное, 5 столетий назад, претерпевает определенные постоянно коррективы, и на данном этапе он, сейчас уже речь идет не о сформировании казахской нации как политической единицы, а казахской плюс максимального количества этнических групп, проживающих, всех этнических групп, на основе гражданской идентичности, а не этнической. Спасибо.
Professor Shapira, very briefly, please.
Yes, thank you. 2 short comments. First, about the Kazakhs. Let's begin with the meaning of the name of Kazakhs. The name means freebooters, people opposed to any foreign, in this case, that will be Uzbek Khans, power. So indeed, the consolidation of a Kazakh proto-nation goes back to the beginnings of the 16th century. And another matter, the Kazakh tribes experienced the much longer contact with the Russian Empire, imperial power than other peoples of the so-called Central Asia. This is one thing. Another remarks about the Iranian nation. Iranian nation is a fact. The Iranian nation cannot be split. All Iranians, whether they speak the language called in Iran Turk, in other countries called Azeri, or even Kurdish, or many other languages, constitute a political nation whose idea goes at least 2,500 years ago. Thank you.